Remember those lunchboxes, the ones with cartoon characters or rock bands on the front? Every day you'd open them up, hoping for something good. Back in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, school lunches were weird and wonderful. Long before fancy bento, boxes, and organic snacks, we had strange sandwich combinations that kids today would never understand. Let's rediscover 30 forgotten school sandwiches you ate in your childhood. The Fluffernutter, that perfect marriage of peanut butter and marshmallow fluff squeezed between two slices of pillowy white bread. This New England classic transformed mundane lunch periods into moments of sweet anticipation. Kids lucky enough to unwrap this cloud-like creation became instant cafeteria royalty. The marshmallow cream would often peek out from the edges, a telltale sign of the treasure hidden inside. The sandwich first gained popularity in the 1960s when Durkee Mower's marshmallow fluff commercials filled Saturday morning TV slots. By lunchtime, the two spreads would begin their magical dance, the peanut butter softening slightly as the fluff created sweet pockets throughout. Some families added a thin spread of jelly for a PB&F&J that delivered an extra layer of fruity sweetness. Remember trading half your sandwich for someone's chocolate pudding cup? That was childhood economics at its finest. Nothing divided the lunchroom hierarchy faster than unwrapping an olive loaf sandwich. This processed meat studded with green olives like prehistoric insects trapped in amber was either your proudest possession or deepest embarrassment. Popular throughout the 1960s and 70s, olive loaf was a deli counter staple that parents purchased pre-sliced and neatly packaged. Spread with a generous layer of mayonnaise on white bread, the sandwich created clear social boundaries at the lunch table. Olive enthusiasts would gather together, comparing how many whole olive pieces they'd scored in their slices, while olive skeptics watched from a safe distance. The perfect slice contained at least 3 visible olives, preferably distributed evenly throughout. The truly lucky kids might discover a slice with an olive that spanned the entire thickness of the meat, considered a good fortune charm worth at least a pudding cup in trade value. What lunchbox treasures await in our next forgotten classic? Long before food bloggers discovered unusual flavor combinations, American children of the 1940s and 50s were quietly enjoying the surprisingly harmonious marriage of peanut butter and pickles. This Depression-era creation paired smooth, nutty peanut butter with the acidic crunch of dill pickles, a combination that somehow makes perfect sense when you taste it. The sharp vinegar tang of the pickles cuts through the rich density of the peanut butter, creating a flavor profile that's both familiar and unexpected. Kids who brought these sandwiches to school often kept them secret until safely among friends, knowing the strange combination might raise eyebrows. The sandwich experienced a brief cultural resurgence in the early 1960s when women's magazines featured it as an economical lunch option. Remember the look on your friend's face the first time you offered them a bite? That mixture of doubt turning to surprised delight is a memory many still treasure. Before we worried about processed foods and preservatives, there was the beautiful simplicity of the Bologna and potato chip sandwich, a symphony of textures that delivered salt, fat, and satisfying crunch in every bite. This lunchbox legend featured a single slice of Bologna, always with the red ring removed if you were particular, a smear of yellow mustard, and a handful of crushed potato chips pressed into the mix. As the sandwich sat in your lunchbox through morning classes, the chips would partially soften while maintaining pockets of crunch, creating a texture that fancy restaurants now try to recreate and call contrast of textures. In the 1970s, when this sandwich reached peak popularity, fierce debates raged across playgrounds about the optimal chip variety: ridged for structural integrity or thin for maximum crunch. Remember the satisfying sound as you took that first bite? That chip crackle announced to everyone around that your lunch game was strong. Before cheesecake flavored everything, there was the humble cream cheese and jelly sandwich, the poor kids' cheesecake that brought a touch of dessert to midday meals. This sweet creation spread thick Philadelphia cream cheese on soft white bread, topped with a layer of bright purple grape jelly that would slowly bleed into beautiful swirls as lunchtime approached. Making this sandwich required parental finesse. Spreading cold cream cheese on soft bread without tearing it was a morning art form that demonstrated genuine care. The sandwich first gained prominence in the 1950s when refrigeration became commonplace in American homes, making perishable cream cheese a practical lunchbox option. The colors alone made it special. Opening your lunch to find the white and purple swirled creation marked you as having a parent who went the extra mile. Remember how the jelly would sometimes soak through, leaving sticky purple fingerprints on your spelling test? Some childhood messes were worth it. When the pantry was nearly bare but lunch still needed packing, the butter and sugar sandwich emerged as a sweet solution that turned scarcity into a treat. This Depression-era creation featured white bread spread with a thick layer of softened butter, generously sprinkled with white sugar that would crunch delightfully between your teeth. The magic happened during the morning wait for lunch. The sugar would partially dissolve into the butter, creating a sweet glaze that transformed ordinary bread into something special. The corners of the sandwich often collected extra sugar granules that hadn't quite stuck to the butter, creating little sugary deposits that savvy eaters saved for last. Nature's sprinkles before sprinkles were a common pantry item. Remember how the perfect butter temperature was crucial? Too cold and it would tear the bread, too warm and the sugar would immediately dissolve. Those sweet, buttery bites fueled countless playground adventures, before anyone worried about strange food combinations. The banana and mayo sandwich delivered a sweet, tangy fusion that was surprisingly creamy and delicious. This Southern classic arranged thinly sliced bananas on white bread with a generous layer of mayonnaise, sometimes with a sprinkle of sugar for extra sweetness. The sandwich rose to popularity during the Great Depression, when bananas were one of the more affordable fruits, and continued its reign through the baby boomer childhood years. The arrangement of banana slices was an art form. Experienced sandwich makers would slightly overlap them to ensure complete coverage, while the truly patient would slice them lengthwise to create perfect banana blankets. The ripeness of the banana was critical. Too green and the sandwich was starchy and firm. Too ripe and it would dissolve into banana mush by lunchtime. Remember the surprised looks from friends who'd never seen this combination before? Their loss was definitely your gain. When real bacon was too expensive or time-consuming for busy mornings, the bacon bit and cheese spread sandwich provided that smoky, cheesy flavor in an affordable, ready-in-seconds package. This 1970s creation combined shelf-stable cheese spread, often cheese whiz, with a generous sprinkle of Baccos or other bacon-flavored bits to create a sandwich that was both convenient and exciting to young palates. The artificial bacon bits, first introduced by General Mills in 1965, became a pantry staple in many American homes, finding their way into everything from salads to sandwiches. When sprinkled into soft cheese spread on white bread, they created a textural contrast that was addictively satisfying. The creamy cheese against the crunchy bits made every bite interesting. Remember how the vibrant orange cheese against the reddish-brown bits created a sandwich that stood out in the lunchroom? That visual pop made it instantly recognizable from across the cafeteria. The sandwich that came from a little can with a devil on it, deviled ham spread on white bread, was a lunchbox staple that announced itself with a distinctive tangy aroma. This finely ground ham, mixed with spices and mayonnaise, came in an instantly recognizable small can with a paper wrapper featuring the Underwood Devil logo, a product virtually unchanged since its introduction in 1868. Opening the can was a ritual itself. Some parents would remove the paper completely, others would tear just enough to access the contents, and the careful ones would meticulously unwrap and save the paper design. The spread had a smooth, almost pâté-like consistency that was easily spread on soft bread, sometimes enhanced with chopped celery, pickle relish, or a squirt of yellow mustard for extra zing. Remember the oily spots that would appear on your bread or wax paper by lunchtime? That was the sign of authentic deviled ham doing its thing. The cheese and apple butter sandwich delivered a sweet-savory combination that predated our modern obsession with contrasting flavors. This rustic creation paired a slice of mild cheddar or American cheese with a generous spread of spiced apple butter. A smooth, concentrated spread made from apples cooked down with cinnamon and sugar until caramelized and rich. Popular in rural communities and then suburban homes of the 1960s, this sandwich offered a taste of homemade goodness even in mass-produced white bread. The apple butter, often made by grandmothers during fall apple season and given as gifts throughout the year, turned an ordinary cheese sandwich into something special that connected children to family traditions. the mellowness of the cheese against the sweet-spiced spread created a flavor combination reminiscent of apple pie with cheese, a classic American pairing. Remember autumn lunchtimes when the scent of apple and cinnamon filled the air around you? Pure childhood comfort. The sandwich that cleared a 3-foot radius around you, sardines mashed with onion and spread on bread, was a bold lunchbox, choice that immediately identified you as either very worldly or very unusual. This protein-packed creation combined tinned sardines, often in oil or mustard sauce, with finely minced onion and a dollop of mayonnaise, sometimes enhanced with a splash of lemon juice or vinegar. Popular in immigrant households and working class families of the 1950s, the sandwich reflected both European influences and economical protein sources during times when fresh fish was expensive or unavailable. The oily fish would typically soak into the bread, creating a uniform texture that was surprisingly soft and moist. There was an unspoken social consequence to bringing this aromatic sandwich to school. While some children would dramatically hold their noses in protest, others might be secretly curious about your sophisticated palate. Remember the extra elbow room you'd suddenly have at the lunch table? Sometimes social isolation had its perks. Liverwurst, that smooth, spreadable liver sausage that was either the height of sophistication or utterly revolting, depending on your childhood palate. This German-inspired sandwich paired creamy liverwurst with the contrasting crunch and sweetness of pickle chips or relish. Popular through the 1960s, particularly in Midwestern communities with strong German heritage, liverwurst sandwiches were assembled on rye bread when available, or the more kid-friendly white bread for picky eaters. The rich, mineral flavor of the liverwurst was an acquired taste that often divided siblings, one child requesting it daily while another refused to sit at the same lunch table. Parents who served this sandwich were often continuing family traditions, having grown up with liverwurst themselves. The texture was uniquely silky, almost like pâté, spreading easily on bread and often paired with yellow mustard in addition to sweet pickles. Remember that first cautious bite? For many, it was an early lesson in expanding culinary horizons. The caviar of the South made its way into countless lunchboxes throughout the mid-20th century. Homemade pimento cheese, spread thick on white bread, was a point of pride for many Southern mothers. This simple yet distinctive spread combined sharp cheddar cheese, mayonnaise, and sweet red pimento peppers into a creamy, slightly tangy concoction that could be as smooth or as chunky as family preference dictated. Every household had their secret recipe, some adding a dash of hot sauce, others incorporating cream cheese for extra smoothness, and the purists insisting that only hand-grated cheese created the proper texture. The vibrant orange spread presented beautifully against white bread, creating a sandwich that was visually appealing even after hours in a warm locker or desk. Remember how regional variations created friendly debates? South Carolina versions often included extra sharp cheese and a touch of cayenne, while Georgia recipes might incorporate sweeter peppers and more mayonnaise. When fresh meat was expensive or refrigeration limited, Spam provided a shelf-stable protein that transformed into surprisingly satisfying sandwiches. This distinctive spiced ham product, introduced in 1937 by Hormel, became a pantry staple during World War II due to rationing and remained popular through the baby boomer childhood years. The classic school lunch version featured thin slices of Spam on white bread with a generous squirt of yellow mustard, the tangy mustard cutting through the rich, salty meat perfectly. The sandwich maintained its structural integrity better than most lunch options, rarely suffering from squishing or sogginess even when placed at the bottom of a heavy lunch bag. The thickness of the Spam slice was a direct reflection of your parents' generosity or budgeting philosophy. Thin slices might stretch a can across multiple sandwiches and days, while thick slices signaled abundance or special occasions. Remember the distinctive sound of slicing through cold Spam? That was the soundtrack of countless morning lunch preparations. When summer gardens overflowed with cucumbers, this refreshing sandwich brought a touch of English tea tradition to American lunchboxes. Thinly sliced cucumbers arranged precisely on bread, spread with cream cheese, created a cool, mild sandwich perfectly suited for warm school days. Though it might seem fancy now, this sandwich was often born of necessity, using abundant garden produce when other sandwich fillings were expensive or unavailable. The cucumber slices were sometimes salted and left to drain on paper towels before sandwich assembly, a technique meant to prevent excessive moisture from making the bread soggy by lunchtime. The best versions featured cucumbers sliced so thin you could almost see through them, arranged in precise overlapping patterns that showcased Mom's attention to detail. Remember how refreshing these were on hot September days when the school wasn't yet air-conditioned? That cool crispness made afternoon classes almost bearable. When the cupboard was truly bare, there was the ketchup sandwich, white bread spread with a layer of ketchup and nothing else. This ultra-simple creation was born from economic necessity during the Great Depression but continued appearing in lunchboxes through the 1960s and 70s, especially at month's end when family budgets were stretched thin. While adults might view this sandwich as a sign of hard times, children often loved the sweet, tangy simplicity and the slightly soggy texture the ketchup created in the bread. The proper ketchup application was crucial, spread evenly to all edges, but not so thick that it would squish out with each bite. By lunchtime, the ketchup had usually soaked partially into the bread, creating a concentrated tomato flavor that was surprisingly satisfying. Remember how some kids would add potato chips directly into the sandwich for extra crunch? That DIY upgrade transformed this necessity sandwich into something kids actually requested, much to their parents' amusement. The sandwich that could clear a classroom with its distinctive aroma. Egg salad mixed with chopped green olives created a protein-packed lunch that announced itself the moment you unwrapped it. This cafeteria classic combined hard-boiled eggs mashed with mayonnaise, a touch of mustard, and chopped olives for a briny pop of flavor that elevated standard egg salad. Popular from the 1950s through the 70s, the sandwich frequently appeared in lunchboxes during the week after Easter as families repurposed decorated eggs into practical meals. The texture was creamy yet substantial, with visible pieces of egg white and olive creating visual interest against the yellow background. By lunchtime, the flavors had melded perfectly, though the bread had usually softened considerably from the moisture-rich filling. Remember that distinct egg-olive aroma? It would waft through the cafeteria, announcing your lunch choice before you'd even opened your bag. This European-inspired sandwich brought a sophisticated flavor combination to select American lunchboxes. In the 1960s and 70s, thinly sliced radishes arranged on generously buttered bread created a peppery, crunchy experience that stood in stark contrast to the processed meat sandwiches popular during the era. Often found in lunchboxes of children from French, Eastern European, or Scandinavian families, this simple yet distinctive sandwich reflected cultural food traditions passed down through generations. The radishes needed to be sliced paper-thin, creating delicate pink circles that were as visually appealing as they were flavorful. Fresh spring radishes were preferred for their milder heat, though winter radishes provided a stronger peppery punch that appealed to more adventurous eaters. Remember how the butter had to be applied generously, not just as a spread, but as a substantial layer that would stand up to the sharp radish flavor. That perfect balance was culinary wisdom passed through generations. This curious combination from rural American kitchens featured thick slices of tomato on white bread, with a generous spread of mayonnaise and, the unexpected twist, a light sprinkle of sugar. Popular during summer months when garden tomatoes were at their peak, this sandwich celebrated the natural sweetness of homegrown produce while enhancing it with added sugar. The creation was particularly common in southern and midwestern communities during the 1960s and early 70s, reflecting regional taste preferences for the sweet-savory combination. The tomatoes had to be perfectly ripe, firm enough to slice, cleanly but juicy enough to release their full flavor. By lunchtime, the bread had usually absorbed some of the tomato's moisture, creating a distinctive pink tinge and soft texture that was paradoxically both soggy and perfect. Remember how the juices would sometimes drip down your arm as you ate? That was the sign of a perfect summer tomato sandwich, messy but worth it. Before anyone worried about peanut allergies, the peanut butter and honey sandwich reigned as a lunchbox favorite that bridged the gap between plain peanut butter and the more elaborate PB&J. This sweet creation paired creamy peanut butter with a generous drizzle of golden honey that would gradually infuse throughout the sandwich during the morning wait for lunch. Popular through the 1960s and 1970s. The sandwich offered a natural sweetness that parents could feel slightly better about than sugar-laden jelly alternatives. The honey application required particular skill. Too much would soak through the bread and create sticky fingers, while too little wouldn't provide the desired sweetness. By lunchtime, the honey had usually created amber-colored patterns throughout the peanut butter, sometimes crystallizing slightly to add an unexpected textural element. Remember how some families added a sprinkle of cinnamon or a thin slice of banana for variation? Those special touches made an everyday sandwich feel like something made with extra love. The sandwich that guaranteed you'd have personal space on the playground, thinly sliced raw onion on buttered bread created a flavor bomb that was surprisingly popular among certain families well into the 1970s. This simple creation, with roots in European peasant cuisine, delivered sharp, aromatic flavor with minimal ingredients and cost. Typically made with sweet onion varieties like Vidalia or Walla Walla when available, though yellow onions were most common. The sandwich featured onions sliced thin enough to be tender but thick enough to maintain their essential crunch. The butter served multiple purposes. It prevented the bread from becoming soggy, tamed the onion's sharpness slightly, and added richness to what was otherwise a very assertive flavor profile. Remember how the type of onion dramatically altered the experience? Yellow onions were sharp and assertive. Red onions added a hint of sweetness and spectacular color that transformed the bread to a light pink, while white onions provided the cleanest, most pungent bite. This sophisticated sandwich combined the smooth richness of cream cheese with the briny pop of sliced green olives, a flavor combination that introduced many children to the concept of savory, creamy contrasts. Popular from the 1950s through the early 70s, particularly among families with Eastern European or Mediterranean influences, this sandwich offered protein and fat in a vegetarian package before that was a common consideration. The olive placement was sometimes an artistic endeavor, arranged in patterns or faces on the white canvas of cream cheese, showing a mother's morning creative touch. The olives were typically the pimento stuffed green variety, their bright red centers creating visual interest against the white cream cheese and bread. Remember how by lunchtime, the flavors had melded beautifully? The cream cheese would have softened to a perfect spreading consistency while absorbing subtle brininess from the olives, creating a harmony of flavors that sophisticated young palates appreciated. The Elvis-approved combination that appeared in lunchboxes long before the king made it famous. Crispy bacon strips laid across creamy peanut butter created a sweet, salty, smoky flavor explosion that was simultaneously odd and perfect. This protein-packed creation gained popularity in the 1950s and maintained a devoted following through the 70s, particularly in southern states where the combination had deeper regional roots, most commonly made with smooth peanut butter and bacon cooked until very crisp. The sandwich required night-before preparation or early morning bacon frying, a level of commitment that signaled special status. The salty, smoky bacon complemented the sweet, nutty peanut butter in a way that somehow made complete sense once you tried it, despite sounding strange to the uninitiated. Remember the sandwich sometimes attracted attention in the lunchroom? Curious classmates would offer trades to sample this unusual combination, giving you temporary celebrity status as a culinary trendsetter. This tangy, creamy combination paired the sharp vinegar bite of dill pickle slices with the smooth meltiness of American cheese, a contrast in both flavor and texture that delighted children with adventurous palates. Popular through the 1960s and 70s, particularly during summer months when pickles provided welcome acidity on hot days, this sandwich delivered big flavor with minimal ingredients. The pickles were typically sliced lengthwise rather than in rounds, creating flat pieces that lay neatly between the cheese and bread without sliding out during eating. The American cheese would partially soften by lunchtime, becoming more pliable and sometimes developing a slight cheese oil sheen that, rather than being considered unappetizing, was actually seen as a sign the sandwich had reached optimal eating temperature. Remember how some families added a thin spread of mayonnaise or mustard to enhance moisture and flavor? Though purists insisted the clean contrast between tangy pickle and mild cheese needed no embellishment. For children whose taste buds craved excitement, the mayonnaise and banana pepper sandwich delivered a tangy punch that woke up the senses midway through a long school day. This zippy creation, particularly popular in Appalachian and southern communities through the 1970s, paired mild, vinegary banana peppers with creamy mayonnaise on white bread, simple ingredients creating complex flavor. Families who grew banana peppers peppers in summer gardens would can them for year-round sandwich use, slicing the golden yellow peppers thin enough to distribute throughout the sandwich while maintaining their distinctive bite. The mild heat level of banana peppers made them accessible to children who weren't ready for their spicier pepper cousins. Remember how by lunchtime, the pepper's vinegar tang had infused the mayonnaise. That created a uniform flavor while maintaining textural contrast. The soft bread against the still crisp pepper rings creating a satisfying eating experience that stood out from standard sandwich fare. This garden-fresh creation paired sliced green bell peppers with American or cheddar cheese, delivering a satisfying crunch and mild vegetable flavor that parents could feel good about including in lunchboxes. Popular during the late 1960s and 70s, particularly in families with backyard gardens, this sandwich showcased simple ingredients at their peak freshness. The peppers were typically sliced into thin rings or strips, allowing for even distribution and easy eating, while the cheese provided familiar flavor that helped hesitant children accept the vegetable component. By lunchtime, the pepper had usually released some of its moisture, slightly softening the bread while maintaining its essential crispness. Remember how some families enhanced the basic recipe with a light spread of mayonnaise or Italian dressing to add moisture and flavor? Others included additional vegetables like cucumber slices or thin rings of red onion for color and flavor contrast, creating a sandwich that provided a nutritional head start on afternoon activities. Before anyone worried about tree nut allergies, the walnut and honey sandwich provided protein, healthy fats, and natural sweetness in a format that felt like a treat. This nutritious creation combined finely chopped walnuts mixed with honey into a spreadable consistency, layered between slices of heartier bread than the standard white sandwich bread, often wheat or nut bread when available. Popular among certain health-conscious families of the 1970s, particularly those influenced by the decade's natural foods movement, this sandwich provided sustained energy for afternoon classes and activities. The texture was uniquely satisfying. Crunchy walnut pieces suspended in smooth, sweet honey created an eating experience that engaged the senses. Remember how some families added a sprinkle of cinnamon or a thin spread of cream cheese to enhance the flavor profile? Though the simple combination needed little improvement, these special touches created personalized variations that reflected family preferences and made lunchtime a more individualized experience. When the refrigerator held little more than condiments and basic produce, the lettuce and Miracle Whip sandwich emerged as a solution that made simplicity feel intentional. This ultralight creation featured crisp iceberg lettuce leaves between slices of white bread spread with Miracle Whip, Kraft's Tangier, sweeter alternative to mayonnaise that developed a devoted following after its introduction in 1933. Popular through the economic ups and downs of the mid-20th century, this sandwich was both a necessity-based creation and a refreshing lunch option during hot weather. Remember how the lettuce needed to be thoroughly dried after washing? Lingering water droplets would speed up the bread's deterioration, creating soggy patches by mid-morning. Proper construction involved spreading Miracle Whip thinly on both bread slices to create adhesion, then placing a carefully arranged layer of lettuce between them, a simple technique that transformed basic ingredients into something that felt like a proper lunch rather than just what was left in the fridge. This protein-packed creation paired the creamy tanginess of cottage cheese with the sweet brightness of fruit jam, a combination that bridged the gap between lunch and dessert. Popular during the diet-conscious 1970s, particularly among mothers influenced by weight loss programs of the era, this sandwich provided substantial protein while satisfying sweet cravings in a format that felt like a proper lunch rather than a snack. The cottage cheese needed to be small-curd and well-drained to prevent excessive moisture from soaking the bread, while the jam was typically spread in a thin layer to provide sweetness without overwhelming the delicate flavor of the cottage cheese. Remember how the sandwich sometimes attracted curious looks in the lunchroom? Its white, bumpy filling standing out among more common lunch options often made it a conversation starter, with some classmates wrinkling their noses while others asked for a taste of this unusual combination that looked almost like dessert, but contained surprise protein their own lunches lacked. The summer sandwich that celebrated garden bounty with an unexpected sweet twist. Thick slices of ripe tomato, sprinkled directly with sugar and served on white bread. This curious creation, particularly popular in Midwestern and Southern communities from the 1950s through the 70s, highlighted the natural sweetness of homegrown tomatoes while enhancing it with added sugar, a combination that sounds strange to modern ears but delighted children of the era. The tomatoes had to be perfectly ripe, the kind that only appear for a few precious weeks of peak summer, sliced thick enough to showcase their juicy interior, but not so thick that the sandwich became impossible to eat. Remember how a light hand with the sugar was crucial? Just enough to create sweet bursts against the tomato's natural acidity without becoming cloying, allowing the perfect balance of sweet and tangy flavors that made this simple creation something children actually requested. When the pantry reached its barest state at month's end, the saltine and yellow mustard sandwich emerged as a solution that turned basic staples into lunch. This ultra-simple creation stacked saltine crackers spread with yellow mustard between slices of white bread, a combination born of necessity that delivered surprising satisfaction through contrasting textures and sharp flavor. Popular during economic downturns and at the end of pay periods throughout the 1960s and 70s, this sandwich stretched pantry staples when fresh ingredients were unavailable. The saltines provided a satisfying crunch that remained partially intact by lunchtime, while the yellow mustard delivered assertive flavor that made the simple ingredients seem more substantial than they were. Remember how the proper cracker arrangement was crucial? A single layer of saltines completely covering the bread created the ideal ratio of crunch to softness, transforming humble ingredients into something that felt intentional rather than desperate, teaching children resourcefulness through the humble lunch bag. This protein-packed creation combined two shelf-stable staples of mid-century pantries, dried chipped beef and cream cheese, into a sandwich that delivered rich, savory flavor with minimal preparation. Popular from the post-war years through the 1970s, particularly among families with military connections who were familiar with chipped beef from its infamous SOS incarnation in military mess halls, this sandwich transformed humble ingredients into something special. The dried beef was typically torn or cut into small pieces and mixed directly into softened cream cheese, creating a spread that was both creamy and chewy with an intensely savory flavor. Remember how the spread would firm up slightly by lunchtime. It achieved perfect consistency for eating while maintaining its rich flavor profile. The sandwich was sometimes garnished with a sprinkle of dried chives or a dash of Worcestershire sauce when available, though the basic combination needed little enhancement to deliver a satisfying lunch that connected children to their parents' experiences. For children who preferred condiments to fillings, this unusual creation paired ketchup with sweet pickle relish, a tangy sweet combination spread between slices of white bread. Born of necessity when sandwich fillings ran short but condiment bottles remained, this simple creation delivered surprisingly complex flavor from everyday ingredients. The ketchup provided familiar tomato sweetness while the relish added texture and pickled tang, creating a more interesting experience than either condiment alone could provide. The sandwich maintained good structural integrity throughout the morning, with minimal soaking or leakage when properly assembled. Remember how by lunchtime, the flavors had melded into a uniform, sweet-sour umami combination. That transformation was greater than the sum of its parts, turning two basic condiments into something that felt like a proper sandwich filling rather than a last resort option. It represented a particular kind of childhood food autonomy, a creation many children learned to make themselves when other options weren't available. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more nostalgic food trips down memory lane. What forgotten sandwich from your childhood did we miss? Share your memories in the comments below. We'd love to hear about the unique creations that filled your lunchbox back in the day. Until next time, keep those taste memories alive.